Good day and welcome to the latest edition of the 18 Bad Guys series in a special documentary where we look back on all the villains who have played a role in the 18 TV series, the world renowned 18 TV series that came to our screens in the 1980s with George Peppard, Dirk Benedict, Mr. T, Dwight Schultz. And obviously, with so many good guys, there had to be bad guys throughout the series in the fourth season. So this week's episode, we're going to season one, episode 13, a nice place to visit, and we're delighted there to have one of the original Watkins clan with us there today, the one and only Robert Lyons, who played the role of Harold Watkins, probably one of the most misendeavors of the Watkins sort of brothers. And Harold, first of all, good evening to you, sir.
Thank you, and good evening to you.
I suppose, Harold, I suppose the A Team. What can we say about the 18 TV series? Iconic, globally renowned, shown millions and millions of times all over the world, reruns in different TV stations throughout the world, dubbed in so many languages. Tell me, for you, back in the 1980s, Harold, how did the opportunity come about for you to get cast in the role as Harold Watkins in the A Team? Had you tried out for previous roles in previous A Team episodes?
No, not for that show. I had auditioned and tried out for the part that I did. Um, I was doing a lot of good guys and bad guys on American television back then, and I auditioned and wound up on it. And I thought it was a wonderful thing because I had worked with George Peppard on my first film that I ever did. So I got to work with him again. I did a film called Pendulum, very good movie, and I played a bad guy in that too.
And I suppose, Harold, you mentioned that working on set with George, and we all know his sort of witty sort of humor that he brought to the character Hannibal Smith, but a guy who was sort of troubled with his demons as well outside of the acting. And in terms of working with George on set, in terms of that camaraderie, that professionalism, was it great to be reunited with him?
Oh, it was always very good. George is a very professional actor. He had done many, many well-known films, feature films, before doing a series. So he was a well-known actor and a fun guy to work with. We became good friends actually, and would talk. We talked back and forth. We met up and had a drink once or twice. So he was really sociable, and just a nice man, a lovely man.
And I suppose, Robert, we see your character right from the off in that sort of episode when the 18 sort of roll into town to go to Ray Brenner's sort of funeral. We see this sort of hillbilly sort of redneck at the sort of petrol station sort of such, and he's sort of let's dare I say he's probably one of those weasel type characters of the. He's not the brawn of the Watkins sort of clan, but you get to see that this is a guy who knows how to squirm out of a tight situation.
Yeah, he's sort of a weak, fearful kind of guy. He was not the toughest bad guy I ever played. And, there was humor put into that bad guy series. There was humor. And, uh, and I think the way Mr. T would handle me and look at me, who was also a wonderful character, by the way. Mr. T is a terrific guy to play with. He's very playful. And I don't know, it was just fun. These guys were cool guys. And a lot of fond memories for me.
And I suppose that Robert, you did the shooting in Santa Clara in California, and in terms of that episode, where you was it a week in terms of the shooting of the full episode? And did you know when you got cast in the role as Harold Wilkins that Ted Markland, who played Logan Watkins, Don Stroud, who played Pete Watkins, and obviously an actor now that has become famous in his own right, MC Gainey, who played CW, sort of working. Did you know they were on board and had you worked with them previously?
Which character?
MC Gainey, who played CW Watkins, and
Uh,
Ed Markland, who played Logan, and Don Stroud, who
no,
played.
I don't think I ever worked with those guys before this. Peppard I had, and I think I had met Mr. T once before. Um, I mean, doing an episode on someone's series, it's almost like family. Usually the cast is very friendly to themselves. They all know each other. They work with each other every day. So when you come on, in most cases, it's always very friendly. Terrific to have you do their show. And even though you don't know the actors, they usually know your work, which is pleasant. They are aware of who you are, the quality of your work, and they mention it usually that they're grateful that you're doing their show. And that really makes it very validating and a pleasure to do it. Even when you're playing the stink guys, you know?
And I suppose Robert, there's some sort of moments for your character in that episode. I suppose the time when yourself and Dee go around to the house when the A team are not around and try and break in to the house for the two girls, and there's a scene where you actually take a fire extinguisher is blown into your sort of face. In terms of seeing the script and all that, and working with Melinda in terms of that sort of scene, is that an awful lot of fun?
Is it what was the last part?
Working with Melinda in that scene, was that an awful lot of fun, that scene for you?
Always fun. When there's a lot of action, fighting, particularly on that show, because they had the comedic value, even in taking you down some. I mean, outrageous stuff. So to me, it's very different than doing something like Magnum, which I also did. That was probably around the same time. Magnum was very, very strong, more realistic. This had that additional quality of having the humor. So doing all those events and wild stuff is always fun for actors to do. You rehearse it and you then do it and you hope that everything goes right. And when there's a lot of action, you hope you get it right the first time. And sometimes you have to do it over and then do it some more and then do it again. And then one more, please. And then one more, please, but then one more. Sometimes you have to do it over and over.
I suppose, Robert, we're going back a long time now, and I know things could be a bit in terms of 50 years now, but in terms of that sort of episode, if you can remember, was that a long sort of working week on set in terms of filming that? If you can remember, were you there for a week, maybe 2 weeks or more shooting that episode?
No, it's usually a week for those episodes, which is kind of amazing. It has always amazed me, even though I've been in the business so many years, that you can get a episode done in less than a week and get it edited and on the air. I mean, wow. Um, just a lot of fun. I've always loved doing what I chose to do in my life. And this one took it always takes less than a week, probably 5 days, or I worked on it probably 5 days only at the most.
And I suppose, Robert, in terms of the A team and obviously working on a set, and obviously the A team became globally sort of famous in terms of ratings in America and all across the world. When was the first time you actually got to see back your own episode? Was it maybe 1 or 2 years afterwards?
No,
In terms of
no, it's usually in a couple of months.
yeah.
I don't recall on this particular one, but it usually only takes. Um, I mean, if the season is going on, you're usually oh maybe there's 2 or 3 episodes that are ready to go, um, and then you can see it. You can see it in a couple of weeks even. Sometimes you do an episode and it's on in 3 weeks. Excuse me. Excuse me.
And I suppose that Robert, in terms of the final sort of fight scene with the sort of Watkins gang as well, in terms of that, we see you trying to flee, and Murdoch sort of tosses the grenade, and we have the action scene where the car flips over, and Murdoch, Dwight Schultz, drags you out. And I suppose one of the best comedic actors of all time, probably, in Dwight Schultz, and must have been an awful lot of fun to sort of interact with him as well, given that you were playing a comedic actor as well.
I probably had more fun with Ike than the others. Um, we just got along. We just got along in a funny way. That happens on the set. You'll find like Ike was just a cool guy, and we just sort of. I don't even know if he'd remember me now. My God, this is like over 30 years ago. You know that.
Yeah.
1981, did you say?
The TV came out, the episode came out in 1983.
83. So that's, wow, that's 37 years ago. My, I don't even know that I was 37 at the time. I mean, that's a long time ago. So you're really throwing me back into the memories. But Ike and I don't know, we laughed a lot. We joked about things and laughed. Um, that was his kind of character anyway. But off the set, these guys are very sharp. He played a guy that's not very sharp in the show, but in life, he's a very bright guy, very quick. So it just
And
proved his acting. His acting was very good.
and I suppose Robert, in terms of that episode in the 18, because we've seen some characters come back. John Ging's character came back and played an enemy in one or two episodes, and then came back as another character. Was there ever any opportunities to come back in terms of another guest appearance on the A team in further seasons down the line, or because your character was so recognizable, did that opportunity not come about?
At that time, thank you for asking that. At that show, I did not come back and do another episode. There was a period there where, you could even be on the same series. You could do 2 or 3 episodes. Nowadays, once you're on a series, they don't even want to put you back on again. I don't know why. It's kind of silly. Um, I have fortunately done like a couple of series where you get on more than once. You get to do more than one episode. But back then, you could do more than one. And on that particular show, I did not. I know that I only did that 118. I know that. Because I know I only worked with George. That was my second time of working with him. I told you that I worked with him on my very first movie. The funny thing is that in that movie called Pendulum, I played the bad guy. I was the only bad guy in that film. So I started off playing. I have not always played, let's just get this straight. I have not always played bad guys, but it just happened on that one. And it was some comedy. And on the film Pendulum, that was my first movie, I did play the bad guy. So in the beginning, a lot of time actors get to play the bad guys, especially on TV, because the good guys need a bad guy to knock over. So you're always going up for bad guys if you're a guest on the show.
And I suppose, Robert, the sort of last question now, and I'll finish off the interview with you, and probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you. Let's say they put the character Harold Watkins in a sort of 18 encyclopedia, a dictionary as such, and they left two blank sentences underneath. And they asked you, Robert Lyons, having portrayed the role of Harold Watkins, to write those two sentences to sum him up, the character. What would you like those two sentences to read?
Well, if I'm understanding you right, what is the thing that I would say about playing that character? Is that what you want to know?
If you to sum up Harold Watkins as a person, in terms of a bad guy in the A team, and there was a description left underneath his name in terms of two sentences. What would you like those two sentences to read to describe him, to sum him up, what he was like as a person?
Well, as a person, he was not the best kind of person you want to have as a neighbor or a close friend. He's liable to take a few of your things away from you without your noticing, and just not the best guy to have around for your own personal property may go missing.
On that note, Robert Lyons, an absolute pleasure to talk to you in this episode of A-Team's Bad Guys series franchise documentary. Robert Lyons, who played the one and only Harold Watkins in season one, episode 13, a nice place to visit. Robert Lyons, a pleasure talking to you. Fond memories speaking to you about your time in the A-Team, and no doubt that episode, one of the more iconic episodes, will be replayed time and time and time again all over the world.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Listen, I hope to see you in Ireland because I have relatives there.
No problem, Robert.
Someday.
Cheers, Robert. Take care.
Thank you very much.